This episode of the Coarse Grind Podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of SB. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
Hey everyone, I'm Sapphire, and I'm the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins' biggest fan. You're also listening to Shawn Rosler's and the Coarse Grind Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode number 97 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With you as always, host, creator, Shawn Rosler. How is everyone doing this fine evening? 97. Ever closer. Traipsing ever and ever closer to 100. And you know, by coming closer to 100, I thought with all the Top Chef regalia and pomp and circumstance that I've done at least half of the Kentucky season, whatever, that I thought it was time to bring it back home to a true homespun feel, to a rich, deep, organic vibe, home to our dear old 17815 Bloomsburg. And with the 100th on the horizon, our 100th episode looking ever nearer, I thought it might be a good time to bring on someone who is actually going to be there that evening, but hasn't been on the show yet. And by the way, that evening for the 100th is Friday, May 24th at 7:30 at the Study Bar, Main Street in Bloomsburg. But I wanted to bring him on to learn even more about him, so here goes. Tonight's guest was born and raised in Danville, and one of 7 children. Both of his parents were teachers, and he had a pretty decent childhood growing up on a small farm. He started working in restaurants before and through high school, attending CMAVTS, which stands for Columbia Montour Area Vocational Technical School, for horticulture, and planned on landscape design, but ended up going to Bloomsburg for art. After leaving school early, our guest continued working in the restaurant and he was at during enrollment, leaving there to start at the first brew pub in Bloomsburg. That wasn't necessarily his cup of tea, see mug of beer, ha ha ha. So he left to help the soon-to-grow Columbia County Bread and Granola. After a few years, our guest worked with the company and renovated and ran the Bakers Guild Cafe with CCBG. At a certain point, it was time to leave, and he opened his namesake's food truck alongside his older sister. After almost 2 years of planning, he's recently opened Route 11 Bistro in Bloomsburg, with food flavors that seem to come naturally to him and certain spice combinations and flavor profiles that are to his liking. But overall, his main concept is keeping it simple. Less is more. Always excited to see new produce, though, and ingredients arrive so he can build more around them. Great ingredients, as he says, don't need much help to show off their quality. Listen, the guy's the textbook definition of a local boy done good, and I can't wait to have him on the 100th. So until then, this interview is going to have to hold me over. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, our guest this evening, the culinary mind behind Route 11 in Bloomsburg, PA, Mr. Mike Jones. Mike Jones, how are we doing, sir?
Hey, Shawn. Good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you again. Yes, you bring up again, and I completely forgot in our little pre-call chat that you were on the Live from Turkey Hill episode along with Moofy and Nebel and all those guys. So you are not you are not brand new to me, but you're new to actually having the official sit down and talk through. So actually, man, I think you might be tied with Gary Vatican once you show up for the 100th for 3 appearances. I think you've got the record. So well done.
Well, let's find something else to talk about. We can beat them on that.
That's right. Folks who are new to the program, folks who are terrible short-term memory possessors like myself, starters, mains, and afters. Starters, we're going to talk about where the guest has come from to be with us today. Mains, we're going to talk about where they're at. And afters are a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit more irreverent, but in 96 episodes, no one has sustained a serious physical injury from those questions, so we will proceed as planned. So, without further ado, Mike Jones of Route 11 Bistro, tell me about where and what you grew up eating.
Huh. Well, my mom, she was the cook for the most part. There'd be, both my parents were teachers, so there'd be the nights where maybe she had to stay late or something, and my dad would either do chili or breakfast for dinner.
There you go.
But otherwise it was my mom, and it was always, pretty good spread. There was a meat, vegetable, a starch, usually an extra starch, and it was great, but I, pretty much whatever was in front of me, I'd eat it. She was not good with asparagus, still not so good with asparagus. It came out the can, and, it's wilted. It tastes like an old shoelace or something like that.
Oh,
but,
oh no.
Well, when I take over on asparagus, everyone, is excited about it, but she's still killing it.
They're in a better place when you take over the asparagus role. Understood.
Yeah,
Understood.
Absolutely. Yeah. Easter just passed, and she had, a heck of a spread. So
yeah, man.
She's still
awesome.
She's still killing it. So yeah, I grew up, eating pretty good food. I guess it was essentially sort of a hobby farm. It started out when I was real little. I think my dad had retired horses, and then it sort of came around to raising Simmentals, which are big Swiss beef cows.
Ooh.
And got really into those, and then we also started adding on some sheep. I think they started as pets, and then it turned into 15, and then there was 30, and then the llamas appeared, and then the Simmentals sort of phased out, and it turned into goats, and now the cows are back. We're actually we feature the beef that we raise for the restaurant and for the food truck. So
awesome.
Kind of cool how it's all coming around.
Yeah, man. Actually, I was just complaining to my wife that we got a third cat, and I felt bad about that, but I think I'm going to have to take that back after that list of basic zoology that you had at your homestead there. That's a lot, man. You mentioned something about you would eat whatever was put in front of you, so I think that pretty much answers the next question as far as what kind of an eater were you growing up?
Oh, yeah. As far as, like, being picky or something, I always say, if it's made out of food, I'll eat it. I'll give something a try every time. There was, when I was, 17, the angsty phase of me, I thought, well, sushi's pretty cool. I'm going to give it a shot, and I hated it. And I just kept eating sushi. I actually liked it, and I love sushi now.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, my wife, she's a vegan, so there's not a lot for her. But she'll through it so I can eat some sushi. So
she's a good sport, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
Awesome. No, and that's something to kind of step out of the historic aspect and into the current aspect. One of the first times I encountered your food truck was actually at Forks Farm here in Bloom. And there's definitely a heavy hand with the vegetable, which feels like a trend that's coming up not out of choice but out of necessity. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, it definitely makes sense. I mean, not just talking about methane production from beef, but
Sure.
Eating a ton of meat isn't necessarily good for you. And I've never feared a vegetable.
Right.
And I think, it's good to have a balanced diet and eat the vegetables. But I realized with the restaurant, especially, probably maybe less than 10 years ago, that there's a lot more to kale than just as a garnish, that you can do a lot with a lot of these things. And actually it's kind of where, my interest has been, is trying to figure out how to make, different, meals out of just using vegetables and cutting out, the dairy aspect. I'm a little bit lactose intolerant, so that kind of was forced on me. But just getting to play with that kind of stuff has been really interesting. So the other night I made lion's mane crab cakes.
Nice.
So
nice.
And they came out fantastic. Just as I would have used regular crab, except using the lion's mane, and they were off. The crab cake sandwiches. We had crab stuff forever.
Nice.
It was great.
Nice, man. Nice. And, that kale point was actually one of the first times, it was actually the third episode on the show. So here we are in 97. Third episode on the show, I had Natalie Slater on from Bacon Destroy. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Maybe your wife has. But she was a vegan baker. She was on Cupcake Wars on Food Network. And, she really kind of turned me on to the whole kale as, like you said, beyond garnish. And she's right. There's so much you can do with it. Kale and collard, like any kind of green application, put kale into it and you're going to get so much more out of it. But it's like we avoided it for so long. Now we're just coming into it. So that's just, it's one of those awarenesses that I think we just finally come across. And it sounds like you've been at it for a while now. So awesome to hear.
Well, it's been fun to, to kind of play with it. And, the other thing is there's a huge market for people that, even if they're not vegan, they want to eat something a little bit more, either vegetable based or just fresher, a day or two a week.
Yep.
So I have plenty of people that'll order, a steak sandwich or something like that, and then turn around the next day they'll have a mashed chickpea or a falafel or something.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I am, and that's kind of been the basis for the food is just to do. What you feel like, what I feel like eating. That's kind of been my menu build is what do I like? That's kind of how I've been doing it. Might be a little selfish, but
listen, it's your show, man. Listen. If I get to pick the questions I ask, you get to pick the food you serve. All right, we'll call that a square deal.
Deal.
And I mean that variety is so clutch, and I do want to get back to that.
Sure.
But actually, speaking of those meals, obviously. Your present inspiration comes from past, I'm sure. And you mentioned that your mom was a primary cook, although your dad could sling some chili, that kind of thing. Are there any childhood foods that you look back on and you miss them and you try to recreate them? They create almost nostalgia in you?
Huh. Well, there's things, my mom, maybe we didn't do it last year, but there was always the birthday dinner. So, she would call me and say, "What would you like for your birthday dinner?" And I always said Swedish meatballs. That was always my like favorite thing. And they were definitely, she called them that. It was a bastardized Swedish meatball, but I loved them. I love them. Still love them. Haven't had them in quite a while, but
isn't it funny how much you can forgive though? Like if it's mom saying, "What do you want?" Whatever, mom.
Oh, sure.
Whatever, mom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then she would ask for, what kind of cake do you want? And, I never really had too much of a sweet tooth. So, the cake was irrelevant, but what was for dinner, dessert for me is always just a second helping of what was for dinner.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that the Swedish meatballs would be the winner, the thing that I would think back. I mean, and she did a lot of, casserole type things. She had a no-peak chicken, which is essentially just chicken over rice with, cream of mushroom on top and some breadcrumbs on top of that, and it was great. You know?
Yeah. Nice, man.
Yeah,
nice. So, I mean, is it safe to say now? I mean, you were involved in the kitchen from an early age. It would seem. Greatest culinary influence for you coming up must have been mom.
Yeah, I actually remember another thing. We grew up. We didn't have cable. We had 4 channels, maybe 5 on a clear day, on television. And I always remember on WVIA, I used to, on Saturdays, you would have only a couple of shows, but there was, Rick Steves Travels Europe, and he'd always eat something tasty somewhere. And then there was always Yan Can Cook. Do you remember that guy?
Dude, hold on. You just stop for a minute. I clutched my chest. For those listening, my right hand just went to my chest. Because if you go back and you listen to episode 20, you're going to hear that I was the weird kid that didn't watch cartoons on Saturday mornings. I tuned into Channel 4, WVIA, Yan Can Cook, the Cajun, Justin Wilson, the Cajun guy, Great Chefs of the Northeast, Southwest, that kind of thing. I'm right there with you, man. Yeah, Martin Yan Can Cook? Absolutely, dude.
I mean, it's funny. I wouldn't necessarily call it, an inspiration. It just kind of sat with me for a long time, and you think about it. And that guy just had such a he was like he's sort of, I don't know, the Bob Ross of cooking shows.
That's what he is.
something about watching him. He just had a good time, and he was just there. It didn't matter if you were watching or not. He was going to have a good time.
Zero F's given, and he's still, I mean, to this day. And first of all, the guy hasn't aged, bastard, because I've aged.
Going?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's still going. He was on, how many seasons ago was it? Top Chef. He was on. And, no, man, he's all over the place still. So he's out there, still doing it.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So between Mom and WVIA, that's where, and that's admittedly kind of where mine came from in the same way. So I totally understand. But, and I asked this next question, I kind of know from your intro, but when was the moment that you realized, food wasn't just something you wanted to do, but something you wanted to do with your life? When did that happen?
Well, I don't know. I still feel like I'm a kid growing up, so that's tricky. There've been there has to have been at least 2, maybe 3 times where I've said I'm done with kitchens. I'm gonna do this now, and somehow I just keep finding myself back there, and I just keep enjoying it. I love the pace, and just the. I don't know. It's just rewarding. The point that it really hit me, I think, was when we opened up when I was working at Columbia County Bread and Granola, and we opened up the Baker's Cafe. I started to see that there was something a little bit more to it. And the people, my attention to making sure that people were eating right was kind of being received well, and it started to take off, and eventually. I left there and we opened the food truck, and I brought some of that crew with me, and I found new friends and fans, and it was pretty cool. And now the restaurant's just the next iteration of that, and it's just great. We have more space. It's still not huge, but we have a lot more space in the food truck to do everything, and to make a much more varied menu. And people are coming out of the woodwork with all sorts of different, meats and produces and things for us to play with. It's pretty exciting. So I'm just looking forward to what's next with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And I'm sitting here thinking back. I think it was either episode 12. No, it was episode 12. Lisa Fernandez, she was from season 2 of Top Chef, and she was just coming out with her food truck in New York City, Sweet Chili. And, that was the first run-in I had with the art that is the food truck. And then I talked to Keith Breedlove, Chef Keith Breedlove, who is the state fair chef of the state of California, but he has the Culinary Cruiser, again, a food truck. So that was like in the 30s, episode 33. So like there was always like this cusp of food trucks that I was waiting for it to hit this area. And then all of a sudden, you guys show up. Sack Lunch shows up. And all of a sudden, Little Bloomsburg has a food truck scene. The taco truck downtown, which is legitimate. Holy shit. I mean, it's mind-bending. And it's so good. So talk to me for a second, completely off script here, about, why the food truck? What makes the food truck work?
Well, I mean, the food truck kind of came out of a necessity. I thought at the time, at least, that we didn't have a lot of money, and I thought it would be great. I wanted to be at more of the farmers markets, and I realized, running at the first cafe, the Bakers Guild, I couldn't get to the farmers markets because every Saturday I'm pinned down in the restaurant, so I never got to see them. I thought if we had a food truck, we could take that out to those places. We could not only get our produces, but we could also, be there at the event the whole time, get the fresh air and see all the people and, be part of the event and, be a facet of it. And it was, it was kind of an enticing idea. So that's how we, kind of started rolling with it. No pun intended, I guess, but, it was a little arduous, getting it up and running. And, there's a lot of things with a food truck. I mean, a restaurant's tricky enough, but you put it on wheels on a, 95 Chevy, and you start running into all those other issues. If your alternator goes out, well, you can't start your restaurant because you can't get it to where you need to take it.
Yes.
if the brakes lock up, you've got to crawl underneath and fix it. So I've learned a little bit about mechanic stuff, which has been a lot of fun. It's kind of cool. I'm not a grease monkey, but I've learned a few things.
More than you did.
I definitely did, and that's part of the whole adventure. Just learning more. Didn't think that in a kitchen job you'd learn much about that kind of stuff, but it's great that it's given me that opportunity to learn about it. So yeah, I guess that the whole thing about the food truck was just being able to get it out to where we wanted to be, to those the street fairs that were around the corner from the restaurant that I could never get up to see because I was landlocked. Now I get to be in the middle of it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's again, not to say like, oh, well, I've heard that before, but like from the people who are in food trucks, that mobility, that ability to be at the place, at the scene, and then to leave and go to another scene, that's massive. But then to finally put your roots down, I'm sure that feels good. So looking at Route 11 Bistro, located at 1233 Columbia Boulevard here in our dear old Bloomsburg, hey, maybe me and the co-hosts will stop by and grab a little lunch before we tuck into the show that evening.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
The address is 1233 right now, but we just got informed yesterday that the emergency, I guess the EMTs or whatnot, 911 Center, they're going to be changing all the addresses on Columbia Boulevard. So we will end up with a new address, but fortunately we only printed a few thousand business cards and T-shirts and all of that other stuff. So,
all right. So until further notice, 1233 Columbia Boulevard. Upon later notice, we'll change that address up. So here you are now with the brick and mortar, with the food truck. The food, the quality, everything is still, just as amazing. And so I have to ask, having seen your menu rotate the way it does, where are you pulling that from, man? Like, where do you get inspired from?
Again, it's just tasting stuff. And I'm not a gluttonous eater, but if there's something new, I have to try it.
Yeah.
If there's, even if it's just something weird, and we've got a guy, he's doing our sprouts for us, microgreens and things like that. And I asked him if he could sprout some corn because I had heard about it on a gardening podcast. I do a lot of gardening, and someone had referenced in some part of this podcast that they had some corn, and they were super sweet and really interesting. So I asked him if he could grow some for me, and he had never done it, but I got to try it. And now it's insane the flavor that I'm getting from these corn sprouts. I never would have imagined what it was, because if you've never had it, it's unlike anything. It's bizarre.
But so this is the stuff that you'd use to make whiskey, honestly, like sprouted corn. You lay it out, you let it kind of sprout out of the...
Well, I don't know much about distilling either, but...
Oh, okay.
In any event, I guess, it just comes from things that I kind of remember, and, I start playing with things. A big resource for me, too, is the Flavor Bible.
Okay.
Or at least it used to be. I think I've kind of built my own Flavor Bible in my head, and up until the restaurant opening, I never had written down a recipe. But we had decided before opening that we need to write these down because I might not be in there. I might be out with the food truck, and someone might need to make a dressing or something like that. So I did, I wrote down all the recipes for the most part, so that they're there for, everyone to work on. But I still appreciate they still ask, can you taste it before it goes out? And I think, that's the fun of cooking. It's not baking. There's not a set thing. Sometimes what you have coming in just might be a little bit different than the last time you had it, and you need to tweak things.
Absolutely.
And that's the fun of it. And I guess that kind of goes along with, me doing the art school thing. Was just, this is a whole different art. And it's using your taste buds and your smell and your eyes. You see it before you eat it. So it all has to be good.
Definitely. So, speaking of those things being good and sprouted corn, which of course I'm the one that's like, hey, that's how you make whiskey. obviously you're doing some innovative things, some really creative stuff. Talk to me about what you would consider to be your greatest creation over the years.
Oh, boy.
Is that like picking your favorite kid, can't do it, or?
Well, I don't know if I've ever, really done it that much. I think more, like falafel is a huge thing, and nobody really does that around here.
True.
But I think I do, I think the falafel is great, but I think it's just, there's nobody around here that's really tried to challenge it, and I thought, if this is the only other guy making falafel in town, and this is what people think falafel is, it's sort of it's a disservice to falafel, because that's one of my favorite things. Mm-hmm. So if this guy's going to do that, that's just not right.
Right on.
I don't know, and that's just an example. I just think that there's just, there's good ways to do things, and there are some people in town that are doing some awesome things with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've actually necessarily created anything really that, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to sound like forcibly humble, but I also don't really think I've really done anything that crazy. I think I'm just trying to focus on, the good stuff and just try to let it show, like let that thing be its thing and do the best that it can do.
Less than the dish, more about the ingredient.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly. Don't worry about the plate that it's on or the paper that it's wrapped in. So I think we have nice plates and good wrappings to go.
Not to say we don't have nice plates and napkins, but
right. But
right on.
It's about getting good stuff. If it's not good, we've definitely thrown. I've had just myself and in the restaurant, people working with me, throw it out, start over, or clean that up. It's terrible. No, that's not how you want to be presenting your sandwich. Redo it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean,
I think it's just
what's that?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's just a focus on, exactly just getting to, the key points of what it is. So if this is a salmon sandwich, let's just try to accentuate the salmon on it. Let's not try to distract from it or do anything else about it. Let's just let that shine. Yeah. And, that's the helpful thing is I don't think I'm doing anything crazy. I think it's just, the restaurant down the street might serve a burger, but they're not going to use the same quality beef, or they're not going to use the same kind of roll. Or someone else might be doing something with salmon on it, but they're not going to use the same quality salmon. And I think that the ingredients are really going to lead it. So I think that's I think I just gave away my secret, but I think that's it.
All right, that's all right. I'll take it out in the edit. Don't worry about it. No, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And one of the purposes of the 100th episode too is to really bring awareness not only to the great food places that we have to dine, but some of the sources that we have too. I don't know offhand where you get your salmon from. I could guess.
Oh, I think you know the guy. I think we might see him on the 24th.
Yeah, I think he might be there. It might be a place that's a little wild and crazy. Number between 3 and 5, and the fish that we just named. So, but who's naming names here, right? Well, for Salmon Steve Curian, he'll be there. So awesome, man. And again, just as a fan of what you're doing, the handful of times, and they haven't been enough. My wife and I both work from home, so we're planning a work lunch at your place sooner than later. But I mean, the times that I've eaten there, the quality of everything has been just so, like, lights out, like blackout gorgeous. And I think, I think that sells. And I think whereas maybe fine dining doesn't get a good float in the area, I think good ingredients can, will, and should. So I guess that remains to be seen. I don't want to jinx you, but that's my stance on it. And I'm glad to see you doing what you're doing. So, looking at what you're doing, let's talk about one of the trend elephants in the room, farm to table. What's your stance on it?
Well, my big thing with it was if you can get it locally, you buy lettuce from a grocery store and you put it in your fridge and it's bad in 2 days.
Yep.
If it's not going bad when you buy it. If you get it from the farms, it can last you 2 weeks. If it's still got the root on, and if not, you're still got a lot more time than you would get from the grocery store.
Yep.
You're also supporting your, local economy. Because pretty much all the farmers that we work with are super awesome, cool people, and I want to support them any way I can.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's going to cost a little bit more to get stuff from them, but
you're not
really,
throwing it out. You're not throwing it out 2 days later,
exactly,
like you said.
Exactly. There's no waste. And I love that trend. I love that's working. I think it's fantastic that people want that. And I'm not sure, if they want it because they want to support their local economies. And so by supporting us and us supporting them, it kind of all feeds the system, or if it's, if it's something else that I haven't thought of. But I think it's huge. And so that's a big thing, to us. So I try to, get as much as I possibly can from all of the farms, and work out, all sorts of different things.
Totally. Yeah. I think farm to table is one of those things, though, and this is not to disparage, please don't misunderstand, but 97 episodes soon to be in the books, and I've heard so much to this end, and I agree with it. It's kind of like the people that buy fair trade coffee. Put a microphone in front of their mouth and ask them what fair trade coffee is, and they'll just up. I think people do it because it sounds good, but when you look at the cause actually behind it, it's so much freaking better.
Quality-wise, taste-wise.
Quality, taste-wise, duration-wise. Here's and another thing. Look, I know probably most people don't have, the local butcher just down the street. I get that. But here's a prime example, though, of just putting a little work in. Like you said, Mike, you leave the root on the lettuce. All right, so maybe if you're making wedges, you've got to pull that dull knife out from your drawer that you haven't moved in 7 years and cut it in half, cut it in quarters, cut it in eighths, put it in a dish.
No dull knives here.
I don't doubt for a second none of your knives are dull, but, Johnny on the spot here is digging for that knife. He's doing the work. Feels like he's just taxed. But, look at the quality that you get when you get that lettuce. Same thing when you get, New York strip steaks. I love talking to people about steaks. And they'll go and they'll pay $13.99 a pound for these pre-cut, strips or ribeyes, whatever. Easter is a wonderful time for the steak eater because as I'm going through, my wife said for a Friday night, she's like, I want steaks. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll get them. So I go and I find strips are $11.99. I'm like, that's a good price. And then I see the strip roast for $6.99 a pound. Picked that sumbitch up and took it home, rolled out the knife roll, got it out, cut them by hand. You save half of what you're spending. So, when it comes to meat, do a little work. When it comes to produce, do a little work. It might be, like you said, Mike, although we've got a farmer's market just up the street from us, Wellivers, here on Fowlersville. And you go up, and, your produce is half of what you're going to pay a Giant or Weiss. So it's all there. I would encourage, as I'm sure you would, that farm-to-table movement, the people who like the sound of that, pay attention. Do a little work. You'd be amazed at the outcome.
And you get tips from them, too. There's all sorts of stuff that you can learn about it. And, for me, from a gardening aspect, too, I love to see, the produce and stuff. And I grew up on a farm, so I like to meet the animals, going out to Forks Farm and, getting to pet the pigs. It's great, I love all that. Now, I know what the pigs will become, and I know, that field of lettuce is going to be cut and, something else will go down. But, that's the fun of it. Just, planting seeds every spring is, one of my favorite things. Right after Christmas is over, I don't have anything until spring rolls around. So it's going through seed catalogs and picking out what you want to grow. And, fortunately this year with our house, I've got a much larger garden plot this year. So we're going to be growing so much more for the restaurant, which that's kind of my reprieve. You know, when I get away from that, I can just go play in the dirt, and it's awesome.
That's so awesome.
So that it's fun, and every time somebody comes in, you know, if it's the mushroom farm or one of the farms we get greens from, or you know, the chicken people, there's always something to talk about. You know, with it's interesting and it's fun. So I like that side of it just as much as I like to work with it, and I'm proud to work with it. You know, because I know every time I cook a chicken, I'm seeing, you know, this person's face, and when we're serving greens and they say they like their salad, you know, a big part of that goes to the greens that it came from. You know,
no doubt whatsoever. And no, it's funny too, because this year last year we broke down our fire ring. And I finally busted out a tiller, and we have a nice little rectangle plot out there, ready to rock and roll. So, you know, I think we'll be, maybe we'll be joining the ranks. Maybe we'll be able to talk seeds someday, Mike.
Well, and you know, if you ever need plants, I always start. They say, you know, give a man some tomato, you've fed him for a day, but teach a man to garden, and the whole neighborhood gets tomatoes.
Oh, that's God, that is true. Because once they start, they're going. Oh, yeah. Awesome, man. Oh, yeah. Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, we talked about the scene. I think everyone listening knows where you're at. You are absolutely, Local Boy Does Good, you know, the farm-centric mentality, which I think is so awesome. And now Route 11 Bistro has a brick-and-mortar body to it. But talk to me about 5 years, 10 years. What's next for you?
Oh, boy. You know, 5 years, 10 years. Well, 5 years time, I want that restaurant to be rocking. You know, maybe we can open up a second branch. You know, people keep begging me, bring it to Danville or bring it to Lewisburg. You know, that'd be fantastic.
Oh, I think you could do that.
If we could do that, and you know, and we'd be able to, you know, work with even more farms, and you know, I get to play with more produce. You know, it's just, you know, to that point. You know, that's 5 years. 10 years. You know, who knows? 10 years ago. Oh man, what was I? You know, 10 years ago, I was a completely different person. I think, you know, it just works that way. So, you know, it's hard to think about. When I retire, I just want to be a private gardener. I think that's going to be my retirement.
There you go.
Know? But yeah, for, you know, 5-10 years, I think, you know, just working on expanding that. You know, figuring out how we can work the food truck into, you know, more events. I think every year we have to turn down more events with the truck too, because it's just, there's too many places, too many people want us, and you know, it's getting harder and harder. You know, we'll have 4 different people asking for the same day, and we have to really think about it and say, oh, you know what, I think this is better for us, you know?
Yeah.
And it's tough. So maybe there's another truck, you know, and another restaurant, and who knows? Who really knows?
Yeah, totally. And that's the beauty of the future. Has not been written yet. So obviously we here at the podcast are, you know, waiting, watching, hoping, because I think what you're doing both locally and culturally are so important for the area. So, you know, again, I think it's nothing but success, but, you know, who knows? I think it's only upward from here. All right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely, man, for sure. So, let's touch on the afters real quick, and then I know you're an early riser like all good farm folk tend to be. So I'm standing in your kitchen. What music do I hear?
Oh, boy. I've been listening to a lot of Tedeschi Trucks. Do you know them?
No.
Tedeschi Trucks band. They're awesome. I guess that's something that, I don't know, a little country, a little bit of jam band mixed in there.
There you go.
It's pretty interesting. I'm not not in the country aspect. I don't really I don't listen to a lot of country music, but you know, I think it leans a little bit more towards maybe Pink Floydish or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see there.
But yeah, I could rock out to that. That's pretty much it. Today we did there were some Allman Brothers and maybe some Steve Winwood playing
there
today.
You go.
Every once in a while, maybe some Whitney Houston or something like that.
What?
So, you know, it goes all over.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. All right, so next after, you are going to be stranded on a deserted island. This is so unfair for a farmer. He knows what the hell he's doing here. You're going to be stranded on a deserted island, and you can only take 3 foods or food type items with you. Inexhaustible supplies, but food or food type items, 3 of them. What would they be and why?
Oh, okay.
Oh, he knows this. He knows this shit. He's like, I got this. Back up.
Okay, there was a book. There was a book made into a movie, The Martian. He pretty much survived on potatoes, right?
Okay.
So potatoes, it's a pretty good starch. It's a versatile plant. So potatoes, definitely. Onions, because they just go so well with it. And tomatoes, because they're just a lot of fun. You can do so much with tomatoes.
Man.
So,
see, I knew it. This ain't right. I can't ask that to anyone with a farming background. That's bullshit. He's like, oh yeah, I got this because here's the reason why.
I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, if I
spot on, man.
I don't know if you ever read Robinson Crusoe, but he managed to do a lot with a little bit. But
that's
right. If I just have 3 choices, if I had to grow it, it's a lot easier that way.
And see, the fact that you're thinking about it like that, I didn't think about it like that. My wife asked me for the 20th episode, what would you take? I'm like, steaks, bourbon, and beer. Like, what an asshole.
Oh,
I stink.
Well, you know what? You can make vodka from the potatoes. So
there you go, poking holes in my logic. Nicely done.
There's a million things you can do with a potato.
You got it. God damn it. See, this is why I bring smart people on the show, and I just let them talk because I suck. Have you at any point read Melanie Denea's My Last Supper?
No.
Okay.
No, I have not.
My Last Supper, Melanie Denea, and The Next Course. They're 2 coffee table books. Big books. And they're fantastic. It's brilliant. My Last Supper, 50 famous chefs, and they're all asked the same questions. Kind of similar to the inspiration for this show. And it all centers around your ticket is getting punched tomorrow. What is your last meal? What's your last supper today? So, real upbeat question for you, Mike. What's your last supper?
Oh boy. Is there? Well, you know what? I would do. Well, let's see. Okay.
You can have what you would eat, what you would drink, who would be there, alive or dead, doesn't matter.
Well, the first thing that came to mind, I was thinking lobster roll. I haven't had it in a long time, and I've just been thinking about it for way too long. So I think probably just a good old fashioned lobster roll.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good. I'd love to have a beer, but I don't usually drink beer when I eat. So probably, I don't know, maybe a Guinness.
There you go.
If that's all I get. And are we allowed to have a dessert or something?
Oh, absolutely. You can have whatever you want. You're dying tomorrow, Mike. Go
okay. Well, yeah. Shit. For dessert, since I don't really do a lot of sweet things, maybe just a really well done deluxe pizza, with just everything on it.
Nice.
I don't mean like Domino's or anything, but Rosemary's here in Bloomsburg, they make a good pizza.
Damn straight they do.
About everything you can put on it. Yeah. So yeah, I would do that for dessert.
Beautiful.
And maybe one more Guinness.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what? Maybe two more.
Maybe 2 more.
My last day.
Keep it going. It ain't gonna hurt. That's
okay.
beautiful, man.
Yeah, 3 more.
That's beautiful.
3 more.
Nice little plug there. Rosemary's too. I agree with you. I used to get smoked Gouda and prosciutto on their standard pie, and holy shit, lights out kind of stuff. So they do well. And finally, last question, simplest question yet probably the most complex, I guess, in nature. What is food to you in one word?
Well, again, first thing that comes to mind, nutrition.
Love it.
That's what I'm thinking about. You can put something in your gullet and that'll probably get rid of the hunger pains, but you're really getting a lot out of that.
I love that.
I think about that stuff a lot. And I mean, a big greasy burger might not necessarily be the most healthy thing, but if you're not eating that all the time and it's a really good burger, why not?
Exactly. Oh, exactly, man. And I can say, and I always like to call these out, 97 episodes deep, that's a unique response. I've never had that in 97 episodes. So well done, sir. And that just, I think that's just is a testament to the way that you are looking at food and looking at dining at Route 11 Bistro down there, 1233 Columbia Boulevard, at least for the time being. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And like, listen, folks, I don't smear a lot of praise unwarrantedly, but the few meals that I've been honored enough to have from both Mike's Food Truck, I guess Route 11 by proxy because I haven't been down there yet, I imagine it is the same quality. You need to get there. If you're from around the area, Danville, Berwick, surrounding areas, take the drive. It's worth it. Don't go through the drive-through. Make a stop down. It's right next to the rebranded Bloomin' Brews. And just like go in and actually eat. Don't just consume, eat. And I think there's hardly a better place that, it's more of kind of a, turn around and go. It's not necessarily a totally sit down, long-term bistro like a fine dining. It's more a casual come in and go. Right, Mike?
Well, you can stay as long as you want.
That's
me and my sister Katie. We spent a lot of time making that space comfortable.
Wow.
So we've got there's upholstered chairs you can sit down and relax. We have now the weather's nice. We've got the cafe out front. We'll be putting some plants in soon enough once they actually finish the facade of the building. So you'll have a little area out there. There's plenty of seats. The environment's pretty relaxed. The lighting's awesome. We've got plants all over, so it doesn't feel sterile or boring. Bring a good person with you and just hang out. And we got tons of books and on all sorts of subjects. So just come hang out, enjoy it. If you're there for a quick lunch, our ticket times are very short, so we can get you in and out too if you need to move.
There you go, man. And if you're looking for a good person, that's great. If you could deal with a shitty person, call me up. I'll go with you. I'll eat there. I'll eat there 5 days a week, no problem. But again, such a unique presence. And again, take time, stop what you're doing. The work will be there when you get back. Take a little extra time. Go check out Route 11 Bistro, 1233 Columbia Boulevard, here in Bloomsburg. On Instagram at Route 11 Bistro, Route 11 Bistro, as well as Facebook. So check them out. And again, man, Mike Jones, thank you so much, buddy. It was great meeting you the first time. Great talking to you this time. And I can't wait to have you on stage for the hundo. So thank you so much, man, for taking the time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Shawn.
Right on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 97 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With me again this evening, the culinary mind behind Route 11 in Bloomsburg, PA, Mike Jones. Our producer this evening, as always, has been the lovely and voluptuous Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. the Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out all of his erotica, steampunk, libertarian happenings in the 18431 Honesdale. Next episode, 98. The countdown continues, 2 more to 100. Stay tuned, you won't want to miss it. Hey, do you like coffee? Do you like gourmet coffee? Do you like really amazing gourmet coffee that's a total steal and just happens to be based on a culinary podcast? Well, look no further. The Coarse Grind Podcast has teamed up with the Mr. G Coffee Company to create the perfect custom blend. Dark is the logo itself with hints of caramel, sea salt, and dark chocolate. It is luxury in a cup at an incredible price. Be sure to check out their site today, MrGCoffee.com, and order some now.